I recently had a friend who wanted to experience the older titles of the Elder Scrolls series and asked me where to start. I, of course, recommended Daggerfall to him. It's the perfect time capsule for the early action role-playing games the late 90s had to offer us. It's filled with bold and innovative ideas that continue their legacy across the rest of the Elder Scrolls series for years to come. But it can also be frustrating for newcomers who are used to the more modern approach to these games. I can promise you, it certainly was for me when I first started, and it definitely was for my friend. So that's why I decided to make a video going over a handful of tips that I learned from playing Daggerfall, in the hopes that maybe if you guys decide to give this wonderful game a chance, you won't struggle as much as I did. The first tip of advice I'd give newcomers wanting to try this game is to download and play it through Daggerfall Unity. Now, this might make the old school fans shake their head in disapproval, but in my opinion, this is the best way to ease someone into this kind of game. Made by, what I've seen on their website, one person with a passion for Daggerfall, the only thing the Unity version of Daggerfall does is bring in more modern controls, a UI, and options to this game. There's also mod compatibility for Unity, which adds a variety of unique things to the game, ranging from new additions to graphical overhauls like Dream. My first ever playthrough of Daggerfall, which you can find on this channel, was done through Daggerfall Unity using Dream, and honestly, I'm so glad I did it this way. A few months later, I booted up the original Daggerfall, and I don't think I'd gotten very far with the controls. So my first tip is to please check out Daggerfall Unity. You won't regret it. My second tip is the Ebony Dagger. When creating your character, you have a choice of answering 12 questions or automatically generating them for your background. I highly recommend answering the questions for one reason: the Ebony Dagger. This starting item carried me through my playthrough, only ever being replaced toward the very end when I acquired Daedric weaponry. Plus, thanks to it being an old school RPG, some creatures will resist certain weapon types. Here you can see an imp resist my iron longsword, but die almost instantly with the Ebony Dagger. It's a fantastic weapon to have early in the game, so if you see it pop up on the questions, pick it up. You'll thank me later. Exploring in Daggerfall is quite dangerous, and there are some moments when you'll need a few spells to assist. Yes, that even means for you barbarians. The most important spell I recommend is Recall. It sets an anchor point wherever you're standing with the first cast and allows you to teleport back to that spot with the second. This makes it an outstanding time saver when dungeon crawling. Simply cast a spell at the dungeon entrance, and whenever you're over encumbered with loot or wish to leave, do it again. In my original playthrough, I didn't understand this spell and spent entire hour-long episodes searching for exits in the labyrinth-like dungeons of this game. Hopefully this tip can spare you from the same fate. Other spells I'd recommend are Water Breathing, Water Walking, and Buoyancy. These three spells are important because dungeons in Daggerfall are randomized, meaning sometimes your quest items will spawn in tunnels or rooms filled with water, making them very difficult to acquire. Before you ask, no, not even Argonians are exempt from drowning in Daggerfall. Water breathing is self-explanatory, but water walking and buoyancy can be misleading. Perhaps it's from Warcraft that I thought this, but I assumed water walking meant you could walk on water, but that's not the case. Instead, it increases your swimming speed, making those watery death traps considerably more bearable. As for buoyancy, it serves as a weaker and cheaper version of water walking, meaning even the low intelligence and high strength builds should be able to cast it. I cannot recommend these spells enough. They've been absolute lifesavers for me numerous times in my playthrough, and hopefully they'll do the same for you as well. The fourth tip involves magical items, their limited use, and how to identify them. During your adventures, you may stumble upon an item that has some kind of sparks circling it. This means the item is enchanted and can be identified and used as a magical item. Identifying an item is simple. Go to the Mages Guild, find a particular NPC that offers the services, and ask for it to be identified. It can sometimes cost a bit of coin, so make sure you have some stashed away. In my original playthrough, I managed to get some magical boots that increased my speed and momentarily made me a god. I wore them all the time, so you can imagine my surprise when they suddenly ran out of power and vanished from my inventory. It is important to use your magical items wisely when you get them. When held, when used, and when strike enchantments will always decrease the durability of your magical items, while artifact enchantments that passively increase the skill while equipped will not. Walking around Daggerfall can be fun. at least for the first hour or so, after which the charm of the sprawling cities start to fade away. Luckily, the developers knew this and gave us a way of speeding things up, and that's by going to one of the many general stores and purchasing either a horse or a cart. When starting, I highly recommend purchasing a cart first. It works as a portable storage for all your loot and even your gold. Plus, it's way cheaper than a horse. It isn't as fast as the horse itself, but it is faster than walking. Also, gold in this game has a carry weight, meaning the burden of your wealth is very real in this game, so if that doesn't encourage you to go get a cart, then I don't know what will. You can purchase a horse and a cart and swap them out whenever you like. The cart, or wagon as the game calls it, is something that you'll always have with you even if you're not using it, so don't worry about having to trade one out for the other. Another thing that surprised me when I first started was that some classes were incapable of wearing certain types of armor. For example, here's my freshly made barbarian character named Barb. Due to her background, she started with an iron cuirass. However, when I get into the game itself, you can see she's prohibited from wearing it. I first discovered this after a few hours into a playthrough and was annoyed when I couldn't equip some nice elvish armor. The best way to combat this is to pick custom on the class menu and make your own. It allows you to prohibit or allow whatever armor you choose, along with some other interesting advantages and disadvantages, which we'll get to later on. The 7th tip is the ability to have a place marked on your map. The cities in Daggerfall are massive, and you'll often be tasked with visiting a particular residence for a quest, meaning you'll either have to go door to door in hopes of finding the person or ask someone for directions. The best way to do this is to approach one of the wandering villagers and ask them about a specific location. Usually, residences are under the general tab, but in this example, I'm looking for a pawn shop. When you ask an NPC, it'll typically give you vague directions, assuming they don't hate you and flat out refuse to tell you anything. But if you keep spamming the button, they'll eventually mark it on your map. This is a very handy tip because you'll have plenty of quests in Daggerfall that ask you to go and find a particular person or a particular building, so this is the best way to do it. Don't give up if one of them tells you they don't know or just flat out refuse. Keep asking around, eventually someone will give you the proper directions. Advantages and disadvantages are important when creating your custom class. It is worth taking a moment to consider how you want to play your character and to pick accordingly. For example, I wanted to play a heavily armored spellcaster, but I knew none of the classes on this list would offer that kind of experience. So I clicked on custom and picked out increased magery so I can cast spells, and resistance to paralysis so spiders don't one-shot me. You might have noticed the dagger moving up the bar labeled skill advancement for class each time I added an advantage. This bar indicates how difficult it becomes for you to level up in the game, which can be an issue as some main story quests will only become available once you reach a certain level, so pay close attention to it. To combat this, be sure to add some special disadvantages to your character as well. For my character, I forbade the ability to use leather armor because I know I'll wear heavier armor, took away the use of my character's fist since I know I'll always have a weapon on hand, and denied the ability to use any bow. Now, if you look at a dagger, you'll notice it's closer to the point it originally started, meaning it should be significantly easier to level this character up. These special disadvantages are all based on how I usually play my games, so I know it won't affect me as much to toss those things aside. But if you enjoy playing a ranger or acrobat, this might be a bit more of a challenge for you. I encourage you to play around and consider your characters and your playstyle when picking these advantages rather than following whatever I did, as it can really make or break a game for some people. And there you have it. Those are the 8 tips I'd recommend for anyone trying to get into Daggerfall. I've never done a video like this before, so let me know in the comments below if you guys enjoyed this kind of content and if these tips helped you out in any way. I'm always happy to hear that I assisted someone in getting into these old school games. I know it's not for everyone, but hopefully I made it a little bit easier for those of you that are new to this kind of stuff. Also, like and subscribe because it really does help me out and it boosts me up through the algorithm. I have tons of different playthroughs that I've been doing on this channel. You can go and look on my playlist tab and you can actually go see the entire Daggerfall Unity game that I did my first time experiencing this game. So if you guys are interested to see how I fared, feel free to go check that out. I'd love for you guys to hang out with us a little bit longer and join this little community. But with that being said, hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. And until we see each other again, take care.